Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, let me first publicly thank you for extraordinary leadership through a very, very, very difficult economic time in America. I think that without your leadership, you wouldn't be out of here in near record time with all the accomplishments. So thank you very, very much. Secondly, Speaker Wills would be the very first to say that this is a collective effort, that none of this happens without the men and women of the House of Representatives keeping their focus and working so hard throughout the course of a session to try to accomplish their respective goals and pass the legislation, or in some instances defeat the legislation that they believe in the best interests of their people. I oftentimes remind, particularly young people, that when the Founding Fathers set up the three branches of government, it was no mistake that they made the legislative branch the first branch. They did that for a very good reason. First of all, the legislative branch is the branch closest to the people, the one that has the ability to have the greatest access to the average citizen. It's hard for 2.8 million Arkansans to talk to me. It's much easier for 27,000 Arkansans in your respective districts to be able to talk to you. And so it is essential that our people understand that their legislator is their voice, their first voice to the inner halls of government. Secondly, not only is the legislative branch the closest to the people, it's the one that the Founding Fathers set up as being charged with establishing public policy. Now, executive branch folks get more ink, and the president or governor gets on TV or talked about more often. And the executive has a responsibility and an obligation to propose, to try to lead, to suggest, to urge, to plead, to try to influence. But I don't get a vote in the House or the Senate. All I can do is urge or suggest. Ultimately, it's you that establish that public policy, and you have done so with remarkable success in this legislative session and should be congratulated for it. The third thing that people need to remember about why the Founding Fathers named the legislative branch the first branch is you're in charge of all the money. Never did that come home more, I think, to the public at large, or certainly should have come home to you all individually, than this week and last week. The money gets spent more often than not by the executive branch. But if the legislature doesn't give it to the executive branch, it doesn't happen. And while there are leaders across this chamber, every committee member, everybody who took a lead on a different bill, everybody who had a responsibility to do their thing in their arena, whether it was in their A or B committee or whether it was just on a major piece of legislation that you felt so strong about, you got to hand it to the members of the Budget Committee for working so long and so hard, and then trying to be open with their colleagues who couldn't be at every meeting because that's not the way the system works. And you got to hand it to your budget chairman, who did a heck of a job, Bruce Mallett. In this age of term limits, you don't get a red shirt year. You don't have the luxury as a brand new House member to sit on the back bench and wait and learn. You have to hit the ground running as hard as the most senior member. And with term limits, virtually every new session brings virtually 1/3 of the House as new members. And this House can't function with just 2/3 of the membership. It takes you all. So to those who have just completed their first session, a special thank you and congratulations goes out, because you have been expected, as the last couple of classes have been expected, to absorb more, to do more, to learn more, and to exert more than your colleagues ever had to do in years past. When I came to the Senate, freshman House members rarely got to speak. Heck, freshman senators rarely got to speak. And those times, while they could have been frustrating, afforded new members the opportunity to get their feet on the ground and learn the ropes a little more before they were thrust in. It's almost like you're a sophomore in high school and all of a sudden you got to start the first game on Friday night. But you've done it extremely well. Oh, you fought and fussed, as you should, about different issues that were of importance to you. But you held up your end of the bargain by representing your constituents and doing what you thought was appropriate. And for the members who have been here, you provided that mentorship and leadership to your younger colleagues in a way that allowed them to grow and to flourish, and you fulfill those additional responsibilities of, in effect, being a big brother or a big sister to your brand new colleagues. Lastly, let me say what I said at the beginning of this session when we did the State of the State address way back in early January. It's easy to govern in times of plenty. It's easy to say yes to so many worthy goals and so many worthy projects. It's easy to give people what they want, inevitably what they need, because the resources are there to be able to do it. It's much more difficult in tough times to lead. And yet through it all, you have come through a remarkably productive session, doing good things for the people of Arkansas in a record amount of time, only 2 days from matching, as I read, what you did 2 years ago in terms of the shortest session since what, early 90s or late 80s. And you have done it in a way that you can go home and be proud of representing your people. One of the toughest jobs I have, and I know one of the toughest jobs that you have, is having to say no to worthy projects, having to say no to things you would love to say yes about, having to do something halfway because you don't have the money or the resources to do it all the way, having to limit some tax cuts that you might otherwise would like to provide because you want to make sure that education or human services or any of the other essential services of state government are met. Things that are worthy things that oftentimes you would like to do. Sometimes you can't because of those contingencies. But I'm here to tell you that they're talking about you across the country. They're talking about this General Assembly and this state across the country. 40 some odd states are running deficits. Some astronomical figure came out this morning of the number of teachers being laid off in Detroit today. $42 billion deficit in California, resulting in huge tax cuts, huge service cuts and huge tax increases to try to balance it in California. $6 billion in deficits in Wisconsin. Huge budget cuts in Ohio. one of the major focuses of the whole stimulus that the Congress passed was to stop states from laying off teachers and cutting education. It never was an issue in Arkansas. You never cut education. It was never even talked about. And so your colleagues in chambers from Washington to Florida and from Maine to California only wish that they had what you have, both in terms of vision and in terms of an institutional ability to meet a crisis head on. They will be talking about you for a long time to come. They'll be talking about the fact that you stood up in a tough, tough time to lead your state through difficult economic circumstances when leadership is needed the most. And they will brag on you for caring about the people of our state in a way that will put you on the map. And I'm extremely proud of the way you've conducted your business and the way you've done the work of the people in what we all know is the people's house. Thank you.